Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football, an episode that I am fired up to get into. Bold predictions for the Oregon Ducks rolling into 2025. Now, what makes me so excited about this kind of episode is there ain't that many crazy predictions that you can make for this Oregon football team. And what I mean by that is the ceiling is really, really high. Look, the picture might be a little bit more murky than it was 12 months ago. You don't have as many known commodities on this roster, but the amount of young talent that Dan Lanning has stacked on this football team, I think the ceiling for this football team is higher than what we saw in the 2024 year, which makes these bold predictions so fun because there's a lot of upside to this football team. Look, if you wanted to get up here and say Dante Moore wins the Heisman Trophy, that's a bold prediction. Very well could see that coming true for Oregon. I think he's the highest upside quarterback Oregon has had on their roster since Dan Lanning's been there. If you wanted to say DeCorey Moore becomes a freshman All-American, I don't even think that's all that bold. I would probably predict that sitting here in the end of July. Well, what about Mateo? You going for 12 plus sacks? Yeah, it might be bold. Very well could see that coming true in the 2025 year. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that you can see the vision if things come together for Oregon. I'm not sure how many people recognize the ceiling that they can reach as a football team. And again, it's a little bit more murky. There's less proving commodities on this roster than there was 12 months ago, but the upside is astronomically high. And that's what makes this bold prediction episode so fun for me to put together. Now, it's a combination of some of my bold predictions, but also some of y'all's in the comment section as well. I'm fired up to get into it. This team allows you to get so creative with what your bold predictions are going to be. Before we get into it, as always, just want to say thank you to you guys and to the Oregon fans. This is going to be one of the more fun fall camps that we've seen from Oregon. There are a lot of new pieces. There's a lot of exciting storylines, a lot of different position battles. The amount of support that y'all have shown the boys throughout the summer months, it's been amazing. It's about to get real over the next couple of weeks. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Without further ado, let's start off with just a simple prediction that I want to talk about a little bit more. That is Dante Moore. He's going to be your quarterback one in 2025. And I want to start with this. The narrative around Dante Moore feels so similar to how we talked about it, not necessarily Oregon fans, but how the national media talked about Bo Nix when he decided to transfer from Auburn to Oregon. And that is, hey, really, really talented quarterback, but really does struggle with decision making. Probably not going to be all that good as a quarterback for Oregon. It's funny how when a quarterback comes to a program that gives him better offensive line and run game in front of him, that has better pass catchers on the outside with a better play caller running the offense, it's funny how those, quote unquote, poor decisions that Bo Nix was making at Auburn, funny how that all disappears when he comes to a better system in Oregon. Very similar for Dante Moore. Like, I understand why people are concerned about the turnovers with Dante Moore because the only sample size that we have of this kid is as a true freshman at UCLA, where turnovers were a problem. What we fail to recognize is, look, the offensive line was a disaster. You didn't have anywhere close to the pass catchers that Oregon's going to be trotting out there in the 2025 year. The situation for a true freshman quarterback was bad. And now you have Dante Moore coming to Oregon, able to sit behind Dylan Gabriel for a full year, has the same offensive coordinator going into 2025. Why is it all that crazy to assume that those bad decisions that we saw from Dante Moore in the 2023 season, why is it crazy that we can just assume that, hey, maybe those decisions are not going to be as bad from Dante Moore in 2025 because he's in a better situation with Oregon going into 2025? Well, that's the thing, that when you see people talk about Dante Moore not winning the starting job, that's kind of what it comes down to. I'm just going to work under the assumption that it's going to get better with a better situation that he's in with Oregon. Number two, and this one, this fires me up. I actually learned about this yesterday during Oregon's media day. Dante Moore clocking 21.5 miles per hour on the GPS. That's 6'3", 210. And it sounds like Dante Moore has really improved his athleticism at the quarterback spot. Now, I ain't getting up here and saying Dante Moore is going to become Lamar Jackson. My biggest concern for Dante Moore was, is he going to be the same playmaker outside the pocket that Bo Nix was or that Dylan Gabriel was, because that was something that I did not like from Dante Moore's film at UCLA. Just struggled to get himself out of trouble. When things started to break down on the offensive line, of which it broke down plenty, you didn't see a ton of juice in terms of Dante Moore's ability to get outside the pocket, get himself out of trouble, and create. It sounds like that was a massive emphasis for Dante Moore during summer workouts. Hey, I'm a really, really talented thrower of the football. But go look at all the elite quarterbacks, not only at the college ranks, but also at the NFL. I'm talking Josh Allen. I'm talking Joe Burrow. I'm talking about a guy like Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, JJ McCarthy. All of these quarterbacks, they ain't Lamar Jackson. But all of these quarterbacks are good enough athletes to get themselves out of trouble. That was something you didn't see from Dante Moore during his freshman year at UCLA. I viewed it as something that maybe would hold him back in 2025. Well, it sounds like he has nipped that problem in the butt and has become a better athlete, a little bit more of a playmaker for Oregon in the 2025 year. That was the cherry on top. I've already been a Dante Moore believer. Hearing that yesterday, I am all in on what Dante Moore can bring to this Oregon offense in 2025. And again, I want to be very clear. This is not a shot at Austin Novosad, who I think Oregon can compete at a very high level with Austin Novosad as well. I just think Dante Moore is a little bit more talented, brings a little bit more juice, and most importantly, brings a little bit more of a higher ceiling to this Oregon offense than Austin Novosad does. I think if you're Dan Lanning, you love it. You got two quarterbacks that you think you can win at a very high level with. Number two, the wide receiver position has come under discussion with the news of Evan Stewart. And I understand why, because you look at this wide receiver and say, whoa, we don't really have anybody who's shown they're massive difference makers at the highest level of the sport. There's a difference between not knowing and not having. I'm a Michigan fan, and I look at our wide receiver and say, hey, we don't know who it's going to be, but I also don't feel all that comfortable that we got a ton of answers on our roster. I look at Oregon and say, number one, although Evan Stewart is banged up, this is a healthy wide receiver room going into fall camp. You got maybe 10 guys that you think have the ability to be difference makers for Oregon as pass catchers in the 2025 year. You got a lot of potential answers. And so although you don't know who those answers are now, you know that there are some options. Like, there's not a lot of teams that can say they have as deep and as rawly gifted of pass catcher rooms that Oregon does. And so here's my bold prediction. I think you lean on a committee approach. Last 2 years, it's been very centered around your difference makers. Tez Johnson, Troy Franklin, Evan Stewart, sometimes Trayshawn Holden. I think that you're going to see a little bit more from a committee with these pass catchers. I think you're going to see a little bit more rotation. You're probably going to see more than just 3 or 4 guys play in the wide receiver room. Probably going to see 5 or 6. Now, as the season goes on, maybe it starts to come into focus. All right, here are the best 3 wide receivers. These are the guys that we're going to have playing the majority of the snaps. But I think to start the year, it's going to be a little bit more of a committee. And we're going to get a feel for, hey, who are our difference makers? But we're going to play a lot of cats early and try to figure it out. I still think you have your 2 difference makers. Now, I listened to a coaching lecture by Will Stein I think I've told you guys this, when he was at UTSA, and his whole offensive philosophy is not scheme. It's not X's and O's. It's about, hey, who are my best players? And how can I find unique ways and different ways to get them the football? That is lined up with what we've seen from Will Stein the last 2 years. Whether it's Tez Johnson, whether it was a guy like Ferguson, whether it was a guy like Evan Stewart, DeCorian Moore, Kenyon Sadiq, they're going to be your 2 guys that are probably getting 10-plus touches or 10-plus targets a game for Oregon. But I think you're going to see a little bit more of a committee, whether it's and that's the other thing. Kyle Casper's healthy finally. Jurion Dickey's finally healthy. Gary Bryant's back healthy. And so although Evan Stewart's banged up, and that's kind of a shadow over this wide receiver, everybody else for the first time in a while seems to be healthy in fall camp. It's a numbers game to me. You got a lot of potential guys who can hit. I feel good that some of these guys are going to assert themselves as difference makers. Again, I'm a Michigan fan. I look at our wide receiver and say, I think we got maybe 4 guys who can play Big Ten caliber football at the wide receiver position. Oregon's got 10. They got double the names. So just from a pure odds numbers, and I ain't much of a numbers guy, But from a pure odds standpoint, you feel like Oregon's going to figure it out at the wide receiver room because they've recruited a lot of talent into this room over the last couple of years. Here's a bold take that I'm starting to buy more stock into. Does Oregon have better tackle play than they had last year? Look, if you told me this in January, I would have said you out your damn mind. I'm starting to buy into it in terms of what we've heard from both of these offensive tackles that Oregon has added in the portal. If this takes place, if your tackle play is better than it was in 2024, you have a top 5 offensive line in the country comfortably. Because I look at the inside, especially with Poncho and Emmanuel Pregnon, and say, I don't think there's a better guard center combo in the country than those two. If our tackles hit, if we get good play from our tackles, the sky's the limit for this unit. And it starts with Isaiah World. I mean, Isaiah World coming in for Josh Connerly. Go check out the 2026 NFL mock drafts. You're seeing Isaiah World appear in top 10s and top 15s. There is a real reality where this kid's a top 15 pick in the NFL draft in 8 months. If Oregon gets that, you feel great. I mean, Isaiah World's special. I mean, 6'9", 340, how light he is on his feet, his movement skills and pass protection, not to mention he can just move bodies in the run game. Then you look at Alex Harkey and say, look, Alex Harkey's probably not going to be a first-round NFL draft pick, similar to how we talked about Johnny Cornelius, but he's a road grader in the run game. And it sounds like Oregon loves what they have in Alex Harkey at right tackle. All of a sudden, you're looking at it and saying, hey, we lost 2 tackles that went to the NFL draft. We might be better at this position going into 2025. That kind of signifies my optimism around this football team. Is that, look, yeah, I think a lot of people assume, look, 2 NFL, I said, look, a ton of times. I'm sorry about that. Oregon lost 2 NFL tackles to the draft. People are going to see that and assume it doesn't get better. That's a very real reality for this Oregon football team. All right, last one, defensive side of the football. Dylan Tiemann, most important player on this defense. Hey, look, he might be the best football player on this defense. It's probably between him and Mateo Yu. Why is Dylan the most important? He is the veteran presence in a young secondary. This secondary is more talented than what it was last year, but we're just not sure how it's really going to come together. Not only is Dylan one of the best safeties in the country, what he brings, him and Bryce Betcher, like that excites me because you look at Oregon's defense and say, it's young, it's unproven. I'm not sure how it's all going to come together. But I got 2 guys in Dylan Tiemann and Bryce Betcher who are some of the most experienced and knowledgeable football players that you see in the country. Those 2 individuals, they make me feel better that the Oregon defense, they're the glue to this Oregon defense. And so I look at Dylan Tiemann and say, not only is he one of the best safeties in the country, but what he's going to bring to the other young safety that's starting right next to him, to the other cornerbacks that are going to be in front of him, monster value. I don't know if there was a more important transfer portal addition that Oregon made. In fact, there wasn't one than Dylan Tiemann, and he might be one of the most important transfer portal additions that you saw, period, in the offseason. Those are my bold predictions. Not super bold, but kind of allows us a different lens to talk about this football team. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. Go and get real in fall camp. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later.